Hey there, Brooksiders. Thanks for being with us here this morning. We want to welcome each and every one of you, whether you're in Canada or Richmond or Kinburn or places even more exotic than that. We're really glad that you're here. If you happen to be new to Brookside Services, we'd really love to know that you were here, and you can help us out with that by heading over to connect.mybrookside.church and filling in our quick online connection card. When you do that, we will make a donation to COVID-19 relief work going on right here in our city. Thanks very much for doing that. Now today in this service, we will be celebrating communion together. So if you're a follower of Jesus, make sure to have some bread or a cracker or something like that, and some grape juice or something similar. You don't need to have the specific item available, but make sure that you have something like that with you so that you can participate in that celebration of communion later on in the service. We'll be starting a new series today too, called Say What? And yes, it is necessary to say it with that inflection. Do it with me now. Say what? Very good. But before we jump into that series, we're going to get things started with some worship right now.
Well, hi there. Welcome to online church today. We're so thankful that you can be with us for our worship time. We're going to be singing the song Holy Spirit. Usually when we sing this song, we're all together. And unfortunately, at this time, obviously, we can't be. But I pray for you at this time that through this song, you can feel the Spirit of God with you in your household or your car or wherever else you might be today. Let's worship God.
There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord, Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord, Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord.
Have you ever felt like you have done something so terrible, so awful, so disturbing that there's no way you could ever be forgiven for that thing? We probably all have things that we've done in the past that made us feel that way. But you know what? God will forgive you. He is willing to forgive you for whatever you have done. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, God's forgiveness never runs out. Jesus paid for our sins, the things that we did wrong. He paid for all of them. There's nothing that you can do that he won't forgive you for. He paid the price for the entire human race and every wrong thing we've ever done or ever will do. Jesus even said so. We're going to be hearing this morning from a passage in the book of Mark, chapter 3. And Jesus says it right there in verse 28. I tell you the truth, all sin and blasphemy can be forgiven. See, it's right there. Jesus says all sin and blasphemy can be forgiven. And he continues in verse 29. He says, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. This is a sin with eternal consequences. Isn't that great news? Wait, I think I misread that. Can we go back? Yeah, right there. Okay, I'm going to take another run at that. Hold on. In verses 28 and 29, Jesus says, I tell you the truth, all sin and blasphemy can be forgiven, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. This is a sin with eternal consequences. Say what? Can we cut? Something went wrong here. We must have copied it down wrong. It says that there's a sin that Jesus won't forgive. Well, that's not right. It's not right. No, cut. Listen, no, come on. We'll let Greg handle it.
Hey, everybody. So glad you're tuning in today. We are in for a great series. We're just jumping into something new, as Jim's already mentioned. We're going to be getting into that in just a second. My name's Greg. I'm the lead pastor here at Brookside, and I'm excited to get into this. A couple of years back, Jimmy Fallon had asked some people to post their most regrettable hashtag, why did I just say that moment. You know, that time when you're in a conversation with somebody and you think everything's going great, and then you realize your foot is jammed in your mouth and you're not really sure how it got there. Yes, post those things, that kind of moment of, why did I just say that? Kind of thing. And he got some pretty crazy posts. Here's a couple of them. One of them from a girl named Jody said that she once bumped into a mannequin while she was in a store and said, oops, excuse me. then looked over and realized it was a mannequin, and she actually said, "Oh, you're not real. Sorry." And then kind of kept on walking. There was a guy by the name of Stephen who said that he was getting a haircut, and he was talking with the barber. And while they were chatting away, the barber said, "So, what do you do for a living?" And Stephen replied, "Well, I'm in advertising. How about you?" And he said, "I'm a barber." Okay. One last one. This a girl named Sarah just had her first baby. People were in at the hospital to see her and all this kind of thing, and they were like, "Oh, this is so wonderful! Aren't you just in love with your new baby?" And she responded, "Well, actually, we just met." Okay. We can kind of wonder, like, how did I get my foot shoved into my mouth? And when we see somebody else do it or hear them doing it, we can laugh our heads off because it's pretty funny, some of the things that go on. But there's those moments where we're like, man, did I just really say that? Is that possible? We hear it all the time from others, right? It's like, did they actually just say what it sounds like they just said? We can kind of go through those moments where it's like, that can't be. That can't be possible that they just said that, or at least that they meant what they just said. Sometimes it's crazy stuff, doesn't really matter. Other times it can be pretty serious things that can have an impact in our lives today. Today we're hearing all kinds of different things about mask wearing and social distancing, and depending on who you hear, like their responses, their kind of advice is all over the map. It's like one says, "Oh, you got to wear them," another it's like, "Don't do it." It's everywhere, and depending on who you talk to, you can end up with a completely different idea of what's necessary, and those can have serious consequences in our lives today. And that's just about kind of physical issues and distancing and all that kind of thing. Today, we're going to be starting this new teaching series called Say What? And as Jim kind of primed for us earlier, it's like we're going to be jumping into one where a lot of people, when they heard Jesus say what he did, they were like, what are you talking about? How is this even possible? We're going to be looking at some of the things that Jesus said that made people say, "Come at that again, say that again. Did I hear you right?" They're called the hard sayings of Jesus. That's kind of how they're often referred to. The followers of Jesus back in the day, even us who follow Jesus today, we hear them and we struggle with them. It's like, what's going on? We can feel confused because it's like some of them are hard because they're hard to understand. It's like, what is he really getting at? Others are hard because we actually understand what they're saying. It's just hard to follow. It's hard to put into practice. It's hard to accept the demands that are put upon us in some of these statements. So we're going to be looking at these things because as followers of Jesus, we can be frustrated, we can be confused, we can even be embarrassed by some of the things that are said. Critics of Jesus and kind of skeptics of faith will kind of look at these if they're aware of them, if they've kind of dug in, and some take a lot of joy and pleasure in kind of mocking them and mocking those of us who believe them or who try to explain them and figure out, here's what it's trying to say, I think, all those kinds of things. So over the next number of weeks, we're going to be digging into 5 of Jesus' hardest sayings. And we're going to try and unpack them, figure out what exactly did Jesus mean? What does it mean for you and me today in our lives? And what does it mean for our culture around us? So that if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a believer, you can better understand what he said and why. And if you are kind of exploring faith, you can, again, have a better understanding of what it is that you are considering. And if you are kind of on the sideline or a skeptic and you're not really buying this at all, I'm hoping that these moments will help you to take another look at some assumptions that you may have made along the way. So today we are starting with that simple question: is there an unforgivable sin? Is there something that we can do that is unforgivable by God? That God says, nope, there's the line, you just crossed it, you're out of luck from here on in. Like, is there? Because it doesn't sound like it. That's not what we expect, right? When we read the Bible, it's like God is a God of love, and he's got a grace, and he's got a mercy. He's all about forgiving us, isn't he? But as was already read, if you read what Jesus said in Mark chapter 3, verse 28 and 29, here's what he says. He says, I tell you the truth, all sin and blasphemy can be forgiven, which sounds great, good news. But, he goes on, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. This is a sin with eternal consequences. It's like, what? What's going on here? How do we understand this? What's Jesus saying? That's what we want to get into today. What does he mean by blasphemy against the Holy Spirit? What is that? And what does it mean for us today? And how do we avoid it? All those kinds of things. There's really three questions we want to jump into. The first one is, what does the Bible teach? And then we're going to look at what was going on in this situation. What kind of motivated Jesus to say what he said? What was kind of the context there? And then finally, what does it mean for us today? That's where we're going to go, all right? So let's strap on our seatbelts. Let's jump into this. What does the Bible teach about this whole question of forgiveness, God's forgiveness of us? What does he say? So I'm just going to kind of give a quick summary of what the Bible teaches, what's kind of woven throughout the whole of the Bible. Old Testament, New Testament, we see this theme built and kind of show itself over and over and over again. And it's simply this: God forgives sin. God forgives all sin. God does not withhold forgiveness. Listen to this. This is Psalm 103. If you were with us back on the Canadian Thanksgiving, we actually looked through this whole psalm in great detail. But for today, I just want to focus in on a couple of thoughts out of the first couple of verses of Psalm 103. This is a psalm of David, who's king of Israel, 600, 700 years before Jesus, so quite a while ago. And this is what he said. He said, praise the Lord, O my soul, all my inmost being, praise his holy name, praise the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, all the great things he does for us. And then he starts to list them. And he says, who forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases and redeems your life from the pit. We won't get into the healing part today. We talked about it a bit last time we were in this chapter. But it says here that he forgives how much of your sin? All your sin. And do you know what that word all means? It means all. It means all sin. It means everyone, to the point that you and I can be redeemed. We can be brought back into a relationship with God. The debt can be paid. Kind of what we owed God has been cashed out, been covered. It's been cleared. We have this open and free access to God. That's what we see in the Old Testament. As we shift into the New Testament, we see the same thing recurring over and over and over. I'll just give an example here. It's in 1 John. John was one of the closest apostles, closest followers of Jesus. He was kind of one of the inner three followers of Jesus. And in one of his letters, he wrote this, 1 John 1, beginning at verse 7, says this: if we are living in the light, as God is in the light, then we have fellowship with each other, and the blood of Jesus, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. There it is again, all sin. What does all mean? All means all. Every sin that you've ever committed, every sin that you are committing right now, every sin that you can or will commit for the rest of your life, it is all cleansed. We are cleansed from it all. God covers it all. The sacrifice of Jesus is enough to pay the price for everything. So all means all. We see this again if we actually continue in that same passage, verse 8 and 9. John goes on to say this. He says, if we claim that we have no sin, we're only fooling ourselves, and we're not living in the truth. But if we confess our sins to him, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all, there it is again, all wickedness. He cleanses us from everything. So what does the Bible teach? The Bible teaches very clearly that God forgives all sin. But there's more to it than that. It's even greater than that. It's not just that he forgives all sin, but that he forgives all of this by his grace. It's by grace alone that we are saved. We're told in the Bible. If we look in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, it's kind of that classic passage that defines the grace of God in saving us, in rescuing us from what we deserve. It says this, God saved you by his grace when you believed. You can't take credit for this. It's a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we've done, so none of us can boast about it. Like, boom, there it is. Like, God forgives us of all sin, and it is by grace that we're saved. That means that you and I don't earn it. It means that you and I never could earn it. It means that it's given to us as a free gift, or more precisely, as a priceless gift that's way too valuable for us to be able to pay. We could never pay it off. The only way we could get it is to receive it, and God willingly gives it to us by his grace, by his love for us, his willingness to offer this to us. So it's God's forgiving us of our sin, all sin. It's by his grace. And thirdly, it's through faith. It's through faith alone. Just by trusting in Jesus that we can receive all of this. That's what the Bible teaches us. In the opening chapter of Paul's letter to the fledgling church in Rome back in the beginnings of the Christian movement, just after Jesus was executed and raised from the dead, the Apostle Paul wrote this in Romans chapter 1, verse 16. He said this, he said, I'm not ashamed of the good news about Christ. There are a lot of people trying to make him and trying to make Christians feel ashamed of what they believed. He said, I'm not ashamed of this. Why? It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes. It's saving everyone who believes. He doesn't say everyone who believes plus, gives 10% of their income. He doesn't say everyone who believes plus does certain amount of mission work. It's not everybody who believes plus, says 5 prayers during the day. There's no and. There's no plus. It's just everyone who believes. In fact, this was probably one of the first challenges, one of the earliest challenges against the message of Jesus Christ, against the message of the gospel, where Paul and where Jesus, like the Bible itself, was teaching us that it is by grace through faith alone. People were saying it's through faith plus something else. It's faith plus works. It's faith plus obedience. It's faith plus, all kinds of different things. In this context, in the kind of the Jewish context where Paul was writing, it was faith plus following the Jewish law. So following all the dietary laws, following all the food laws, following all the ritual laws and the sacrificial laws and all the feasts and all these things. You gotta have faith, but you also have to do all this kind of stuff if you want to be accepted by God. And this actually became a serious issue within the church. It actually led to the very first kind of formal church conference or church council where they met, and it's actually recorded in the book of Acts, in chapter 15 of Acts, where we find the people getting together, and they were talking about this, like what do people have to do? What do they have to do beyond have faith in Jesus to be accepted by God? And this is what it says. And this is actually Peter, kind of one of the key leaders in the church, especially during that time. He says this, kind of gets up to before the people, and he says this. This is kind of the conclusion of what he said. He said a lot more. But in verse 10 and 11 of chapter 15, it says, "Why are you now challenging God by burdening the Gentile believers?" And again, a Gentile just simply means somebody who's not Jewish. So I'd be considered Gentile. Why are you burdening the Gentile believers with a yoke or a burden that neither we nor our ancestors were able to bear? We believe that we are all saved by grace the same way. What is it? By the undeserved grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's it. The undeserved grace. We don't earn it. We don't deserve it. We don't work for it. We can't do enough to qualify for it. We simply receive it by faith. I think of when our kids were young, especially the first few years, totally helpless, totally dependent on mom and dad for everything. That from the day they're born, what are we doing for them? Everything, right? What are we providing for them? Everything. How can they pay for it when they're an infant? They can't. It's impossible. There's no way to actually go to a parent and say, "Oh, your child should be paying for that." You're like, "What are you talking about? They're my kid. I love them. I'm providing this because I want to." Like that's it. They can't do anything. And it's the same thing here. It's the same thing here with us. God loves us even more. God loves you even more. The Bible teaches us God forgives all sin by grace alone, through faith alone. All we need to do is trust him. All we need to do is ask him to be Lord of our lives, to forgive us of our sin, and we have this hope in Jesus Christ. And that's amazing. That's amazing. But if that's true, then how is it that Jesus here, and Jesus claims to be God, and those of us who follow him, we recognize that he is. We believe that he is. But he's coming along and he's saying, hold on, folks, watch out. There actually is a sin that is unforgivable. There is something that will have eternal negative consequences if you're not careful. It's like, what's going on? What's going on here? What is it that makes Jesus say that? I want us to take a second or two, a couple of minutes, and just kind of look at the context, look at what's going on here to see if we can understand what it is that Jesus was getting at when he said this. So we're going to kind of move up earlier in the passage in Mark chapter 3. I'm going to jump in around verse 20 of the passage where Jesus is where the scene kind of takes place. And it says, at one time, Jesus entered a house, and the crowds began to gather again, and soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. When his family heard what was going on, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. It's like, wow, so this is not too surprising. How many people, what would it take for you to believe that your brother or your sister was God in the flesh? Think about that. These people loved him. They cared about him. They did not recognize who he was yet. They were, I'm sure they were trying to help him, trying to get him out of a dangerous situation. They could tell that the crowds had some unsavory elements in there, people that did not like what they were hearing Jesus say, and they were like, oh, he's just a little, touched in the brain, a little too long out in the sunshine. We'll take him home and try and get him rested up. But there was something else going on here as well. If you look down at verse 22, it says this, but the teachers of religious law who had arrived from Jerusalem, they said, he is possessed by Satan, the prince of demons. That's where he's getting this power to cast out demons, because Jesus had cast out demons. They couldn't deny it. They couldn't say, oh, that didn't happen, because there was evidence and people saw and people heard it, and there were eyewitness testimony of what Jesus had said and done. So they weren't refuting that. They were though questioning the source of it. And what they were doing was they were attributing Jesus' work to Satan. They were attributing Jesus' power, Jesus' authority, Jesus' activity to the enemy instead of to God, to the Holy Spirit. The name Satan, it's kind of out in our culture today still. The word simply means adversary. So with a capital A, it's capital A adversary, the enemy, the one who is opposing or standing against. And here, when a Jew in that day talked about Satan, he was talking about the original arch enemy of God, that the first and the greatest traitor against God, the one who fell and took some of the other angels with him. The teachers of the law, they couldn't deny that Jesus did something miraculous. They were just saying, yeah, it's miraculous because Satan's at work here. This is like the work of the enemy. And Jesus kind of calls them out on it here. Verse 23 and following, Jesus calls them out and he says, hey, how can Satan cast out Satan? What are you talking about? He asked. A kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. And if Satan is divided and fights against himself, how can he stand? He would never survive. In other words, like, our enemy's a little bit smarter than that. Like, he's not that dumb. He's pretty powerful and he's pretty smart. That's not going to happen. But he goes on to say what is happening, and he hints at it here beginning in verse 27. He says, who's powerful enough to enter the house of a strong man and plunder his goods? Like, who can do that? Only somebody who's stronger than he, right? Like, that just makes sense. Somebody who can tie him up and then plunder his house. And Jesus here, and this is all in the context of their accusation that this is Satan at work and he's kind of a pawn of Satan in all of this. Jesus is like, no. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm opposing the work of Satan. I'm doing something that shows I have greater power than he does. I am able to not only kind of figuratively here, kind of go into the house and tie him up, like he can overpower him, but he's able to banish his lackeys when he exorcised demons from a person. And that brings us back then to this original statement that Jesus made that we kind of started it off with, where Jesus kind of concludes what he's saying here to them. He says this. Let me read it. Verse 28. I tell you the truth. All sin and blasphemy can be forgiven, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. This is a sin of eternal consequences. And he told them this. Why? Because they were saying he was possessed by an evil spirit. So what was going on here? Like, Jesus was warning them. He was like warning them that if they continued down the road that they were going, it would have catastrophic results for them. Like, this is serious stuff. They were in danger of committing the only sin that is unforgivable. The sin that Jesus called blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. What does that mean? What is it to blaspheme the Holy Spirit? Simply this. It's to willfully and persistently refuse to accept Jesus' work and ministry as rooted in the activity of the Holy Spirit. Like, for them, they were seeing Jesus' work, they were seeing Jesus' ministry, they were hearing Jesus teach, and they were saying, "Oh, that's Satan, that's the enemy." It's totally counter to what was really going on. They were refusing to recognize the Spirit of God, the presence of God in what Jesus was doing. That's kind of what they were doing, kind of in this situation. For kind of a more general application, we can say this. It's attributing the work of Jesus to anything other than the Spirit of God. It's saying, you know what, Jesus is not God. Jesus is not who he claims he is. Jesus actually makes this connection a little bit more clearly in the Gospel of Luke. Luke records this in chapter 12, verses 9 and 10, where, again, Jesus, in a very similar situation, says, anyone who denies me here on earth will be denied before God's angels. Anyone who denies me here on earth will be denied before God's angels. He's saying, if you don't recognize me, God will not recognize you. And then he says, anyone who speaks against the Son of Man can be forgiven, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. He's kind of equating denying him with blaspheming the Holy Spirit. Deny here simply means to disown or to repudiate or to turn your back on, to refuse to be counted as one of Jesus' followers. That's what it's describing here. And it's a persistent, stubborn, consistent, perpetual refusal to accept Jesus. It's that continued rejection of Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior that he's referring to. And how do we know that it's not just kind of a one-time thing? Oh, I said words that were against the Holy Spirit, but now I've changed my mind, but I'm worried that maybe I blew it anyway. Well, Peter, who is one of the original followers of Jesus, kind of the foundation of the early church in a lot of ways, he denied Jesus. He denied that he knew him. He's like, Jesus who? I don't get. And this was the night when Jesus was betrayed. Like, if you read the Gospels, you'll see that account. Peter totally turned his back on Jesus, and then he came to his senses, and he was mournful, and he was repentant, and everything else. But he did it. And God still came to him. God still accepted him. Jesus still restored him into ministry. The Apostle Paul, one of the greatest followers of Jesus there ever was, he began, or actually before he began his ministry as a follower of Jesus, as an apostle, he was like a terrorist going around and destroying Christians, destroying churches, doing everything he could to stamp it out because he believed it was totally wrong. So he was totally denying Christ at first, but then God touched his life and he changed his mind and his heart. And so it's not that at one point, in one place, in one thing, I said something or I believed something or whatever. It's that as my life continues, I am, in the end, I am with Christ. I am following him. I'm surrendering to him. That really is the unforgivable sin. What is it? It's not that we kind of accidentally say something or impulsively say something. It's that continued expression of defiance against God. In the Cornerstone Biblical Commentary, it describes it this way. It says that the unforgivable sin is the decisive and persistent refusal to accept who Jesus is. C.S. Lewis kind of famously boiled the whole question down to this. Actually, based on this passage he was studying in Mark chapter 3, Jesus is he's either a lunatic, he's out of his mind, which is what his family seemed to think at this point, or he's a liar, he's evil in his heart, and he's trying to mislead people, which is what the religious leaders were trying to say, is kind of under the power of an evil influence. Or he is Lord. He is who he says he is. He is God in the flesh, and which is who Jesus believed himself to be and who we as followers believe himself to be. But for a person to persist kind of till their last breath, and like for C.S. Lewis, he began his life and early part of his adult life as an atheist, an avowed atheist who believed this was all foolishness. But he came to recognize the validity of Jesus' claims, and he gave his life to Jesus later on in his life. For a person to persist, though, saying he's either a lunatic or he's a liar, rather than accepting him as Lord, if that persists until their last moment, they commit the unforgivable sin. Why? Because there's only one sin that is really unforgivable, and that is not asking to be forgiven. It is refusing to come. It's refusing to ask Jesus to forgive us. So if you have asked Jesus to forgive you, then you don't have to worry about this. Like that's what it's saying here. A person who is in that state of committing the unforgivable sin, they're just not asking. They don't want it. They have rejected forgiveness from God. They've rejected God, so they don't want anything to do with him. They don't want anything from him. To ask forgiveness would be crazy to them, and that's the position that they find themselves in. Reminds me of that poem by Henley. It's known as Invictus, although that's not, it didn't actually have a name when he first penned it back in 1825 or 1875. But the poem ends this way. He says, "It matters not how straight the gate or how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." And it just sounds so stoic and so powerful and so self-affirming and all this kind of stuff. But at its core, it reveals this kind of a stubborn rejection of the sovereignty of God. It reveals this an unwillingness to be accountable to him. And an unwillingness to accept the incredible opportunity that we have to find forgiveness and peace and joy and hope and all these things from the one, the only one who can offer it to us, the one who created us, and the one who provided a way for us to find forgiveness, to get us out of the mess that we've made. So, what does all that mean for you and me today? What does that mean for us today? Two things that are just critical for us. The first one's personal, and the second one is more relational, okay? The first one, the personal side, is simply this: genuine faith matters. Like, it matters whether we have genuine faith in Jesus Christ or not. And I use that word genuine because there's a lot of things that people may think are what it means to have faith in Jesus. And it needs to be an actual genuine recognition of who he is, an acceptance of him, a surrender to him, a submission to him, and asking of him to come and change your life and take control. In Romans 3, verse 22 and following, it says this. Again, this is Paul, who had been fighting to stamp out Christianity. He said, "We are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ." And this is true for everyone who believes. No matter who we are, for everyone has sinned, we've all fallen short of God's glorious standard. Yet God, in his grace, freely makes us right in his sight. He did this through Jesus Christ when he freed us from the penalty of our sins. Have you personally put your faith in Jesus Christ? Have you asked him to take control of your life? Have you asked him to forgive you? If you have, and if it's genuine, if that was a sincere expression of faith in your heart, then you have been forgiven. You are free. You have been rescued by God, and you can kind of put your mind at rest. You don't have to worry about this. You can invest your life now in things that really matter, and following him and in serving him and helping other people recognize this for themselves. If you haven't yet, if you have not yet made that decision, if you're not sure you have, don't wait any longer. Right now, turn off the video, hit pause, do something, and take some time. Ask God into your life. Surrender your life to him. Ask him to forgive you. Ask him to take control of your life and begin following him. Start reaching out to him. Reach out to us as a church family. We're here for you. We want to support you. We want to be there for you. Being a Christian is not about keeping a bunch of rules. It's not about embracing a certain lifestyle. It's about placing our faith in Jesus Christ, accepting who he is, accepting who he says he is, asking his forgiveness, believing in faith, trusting in his grace. We can find peace with God. You can find peace with God right now if you will reach out to him. He wants to give it to you if you would simply ask him for it. That's the most amazing thing of this. And actually, in a few minutes, Colin Dickinson's going to be leading us in communion, a celebration, a reminder of the extent to which Jesus was willing to go, the price he was willing to pay so that you and I could have this freedom, so that we could have our sins forgiven, so we could have new life with God. Jesus paid the price. We're going to be able to celebrate that in a few minutes. And that's just such a wonderful thing for us to be able to do. But genuine faith matters. It matters. Second thing that it means for us is simply this: the mission of Jesus matters. It's not just about us personally coming to faith in Jesus, but us who have come to faith in Jesus now sharing that faith with other people, inviting them to come in. That's what we are called to do, to live as fully engaged followers of Jesus, which means we are reaching out to others, inviting them to become fully engaged followers of Jesus as well. In Romans chapter 10, Paul said this. He said, "Everybody who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." Then he asks a series of questions. He says, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? Right? Logical question. And then he says, and how are they going to believe in him if they've never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless somebody tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That's why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. Did you catch the progression there? Like it's powerful. I'm going to kind of touch it in reverse order because he kind of hits it from the person receiving. I want to hit it from the person being sent. Okay, the reverse order. What is it? We're sent by God to tell people. We're sent by God to tell so that they will hear. Some of those who hear will believe and they will call on the Lord, and those who call on the Lord will be saved. It's simple. That's why Jesus told us, told his disciples after he died, was risen from the grave, and just before he ascended into heaven, he said, go and make disciples of all people. Everywhere you go, every people, all peoples, all nations, make disciples. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. Like, that's what we are called to do. That's why we exist as a church family. It's not just to prepare services and to gather and watch services, but we're here to equip each other. We're here to cooperate with each other as brothers and sisters, as different parts of the same body that has been tasked with a mission and a purpose. We are called to reach out to the people around us wherever we happen to live or work or learn or play. Like that's where God is calling you and me to be on mission, because people need to hear. People need to be able to respond. People need to be able to choose for themselves whether they will call out and be saved. Like that the choice is theirs. We need to give them the opportunity. That's what God is calling us to do. So, is there an unforgivable sin? Yeah, there is. It is to utterly and finally reject Jesus as Lord and Savior. If your faith in Jesus is genuine, you can relax because that's not the case for you, right? But if you have not yet, if you're still on the fence, please choose. Make that choice today. Make it right now. What's stopping you? What's holding you back? If there is something, give me a shout, send me a text, send me a line, ask somebody else that's in the chat room. Like, we want to help you. We want to help you discover why you need to make that choice. A while back, my doctor told me, I went in for a visit, and he's like, man, your blood pressure is too high. It's getting risky. And they said, you know what? You need to do something about it. They said that I needed to get on this medication, and they said I needed to lose weight. It's like, who do you think you are? Say, come on, how rude! Like, you know, I could have responded that way, right? I could have said, oh, what do you know? Like, I want to eat what I want to eat, and I don't need these meds, and I'm forget it. I'm just going to live my life, and sure, I could have, but it would have put me at risk, and it would have put my family at risk if something happened to me. So instead of complaining and saying, oh, how dare you, I went and I got the prescription filled out, and I've started losing weight. Recently, I'm back on Weight Watchers. Like, it's something that I need to take seriously all the time. The warning that comes to us, whether it's for health or whether it's for spiritual life, those warnings may sound tough, but they're actually a valuable thing for us. And here, Jesus is saying one of the hardest sayings that he says. But when you realize what he's doing, he's actually offering an opportunity for people to get right, to get things fixed so that they can be restored to God. Like, that's a beautiful thing. You know, forgiveness is available. But to reject it, to refuse it, is unforgivable. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would just help us to be open and accepting of your word. Some of the things you say are tough to understand. Some of them, they're easy to understand, but they're hard to accept because we're kind of prideful, and we want our way, and we don't like people telling us what to do. but sometimes it's the greatest, most important, most valuable thing we can hear. So God, I pray that we would all be good hearers and good responders. For those of us who have trusted you, have followed you, and are following you now, we thank you that we don't have to worry about this. For those of us that are listening that have not yet made that decision, not made that choice, I pray that they would see it as an opportunity, as an invitation to get right and to get this dealt with. And God, I pray that it would motivate us to share your grace and your message and your truth and your gospel to more and more people around us. That as we celebrate communion, there'll be more and more of us gathering and remembering and praising and celebrating and thanking you for what you did. This incredible gift that Jesus was willing to pay when he went to the cross for our place. I pray that we would recognize that and celebrate that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, thank you, Greg. Right now we're going to take some time and celebrate communion. If you hadn't already, maybe now run and grab your elements, a cracker or some juice, as we get ready for celebrating communion today. If you have surrendered your life to Jesus, you are invited to this table today. We're just going to be eating and drinking these elements to represent Jesus. They aren't some sort of magical, there's nothing magical about these things at all, but they do represent the most amazing expression of love that we've ever known. If you have not yet fully committed yourself to Jesus, I suggest that you refrain from partaking at this time, and that if you are curious as to why we do this, I encourage you to talk to Pastor Greg or any of the staff or the board or any of the other people that you know at Brookside that are followers of Christ. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 24, it says, "On the night when he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took some bread, and he gave thanks to God for it. Then he broke it in pieces and said, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this to remember me.'" Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for sending your Son down to earth to become a man to walk amongst us. Lord, we thank you for your sacrifice, for having your body broken for victory for our souls, for victory over sin. Lord, we thank you so much, and we can never repay you at all for that. This bread represents the body of our Lord Jesus, broken for you. Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Continuing in 1 Corinthians, it says, "In the same way, he took a cup of wine after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood. Do this to remember me as often as you drink it. For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are announcing the Lord's death until he comes again.'" I will give thanks for the cup. Lord Heavenly Father, as your blood spilt out on the cross, it is such a horrible thing to think of. Lord, that your blood was poured out like this on the cross. It's painful to think of, but Lord, you did it with love. Lord, thank you for that love. In your holy name, amen. This cup represents the blood of our Lord Jesus, willingly shed for you. Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Let's pray one more time. Lord God, thank you for this time that we can turn to you and remember your sacrifice. Lord, we say it again, we have nothing that can repay you. So we thank you. We thank you so much. We can do nothing but be grateful. Lord, you are graceful and merciful, and we thank you. In your holy name, amen.
"103, 104, 105. Whoo, boy. Oh, hey there, Brookside. We've got some stuff coming up that you're going to want to know about, but I was just getting a head start on tomorrow's B30 challenge. The B30 challenge is a set of 30 activities designed to help you grow spiritually, personally, relationally, and physically. It starts on November 1st, and each day, for 30 days, we are posting a different activity for you to accomplish. Some are easy, like helping clean up your neighborhood, and some are a real challenge, like doing a set number of push-ups like I was just doing. But they're all designed to stretch ourselves so that we can grow. You can do all the challenges or just try a few. Invite friends and family to join in. It's all happening on the Brookside Facebook and Instagram feeds. You can find the links at mybrookside.church or in the Brookside Brief email newsletter. And it starts November 1st, so check it out today. Just a quick reminder, the November business meeting is coming up on November 23rd at 7 p.m. That's happening online through Zoom, and the week before that, we're also going to have a town hall to walk through the proposed 2021 budget and answer any questions that you might have. That town hall meeting will be on November 16th at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. Partners have been sent information packages to review before those meetings, and anyone else who's interested can check the Brookside Brief for links to download those documents as well. We have new worship content coming to you weekly on our YouTube channel. We're featuring acoustic covers of worship music from the Brookside worship team. And you should check it out at live.mybrookside.church. In fact, subscribe to make sure that you get that content. This week we had Kesa covering Amen by the Watoto Children's Choir. So be sure to check that out on the YouTube channel at live.mybrookside.church. Remember, we have lots happening for you to join in on, like the Wednesday night hangout at 7 p.m. and the virtual lobby on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. before the premiere of the service, and then again for a little bit following the service. All of those connection events are relaxed, they're unstructured, they're Zoom gatherings. You can join in when you're available, you can catch up with some old and new friends, and just head out when you need to. And if you're newer to Brookside, we'd love to see you out at any of those events. And we'd also love to know that you were here this morning. Please fill in our online connection card at connect.mybrookside.church. Just let us know a little bit about yourself, and when you do that, we will make a donation to Respond Ottawa and their efforts to help meet needs across our city during the current COVID-19 crisis. Connect with us and help with crisis response in our city at the same time. You can't lose. And you can do that at connect.mybrookside.church. Now, our mission here at Brookside is that we want to help develop fully engaged followers of Christ. That's the thing that Jesus asked us to do, and that's what we are always striving for. And when you give to support Brookside, you're saying that you're on board with that mission, that doing what Jesus asked us to do is important to you. So thank you for giving generously so that we can see more people become more like Jesus. You can give to support this mission financially through check or pre-authorized debit or e-transfer. Instructions for all of that can be found at mybrookside.church/giving. Hey, thanks for being with us here today. If you're watching this during the Sunday morning premiere, you should drop into the virtual lobby. It's open right now on Zoom, and you can get there by going to mybrookside.church/lobby. Come on by for a bit, and if we don't see you there, maybe we can connect again at one of our online events coming up this week. We'll see you soon.